Over the centuries, mankind has had a great desire for good health. Each and every one of us, of course, is interested in feeling well, and we're actually very fortunate today to be living in a time when there are so many choices available in the healthcare field. We have our medical doctors, the chiropractors, holistic healthcare, to mention a few. Now, no one method has all the answers. Each and every one of us must have the proper respect for what the other one has to offer. So what we want to talk to you about is one option that is available today, and that is the science of reflexology. Reflexology, of course, is not intended to replace the standard medical care, but rather it does serve as a complement to it. We definitely today are living in a very stressed out society, and doctors will agree that over 75% of all disease, including cancer, is linked with stress. Reflexology is designed to relax stress and to also improve circulation. Now, reflexology is not something new. Actually, there is evidence of reflexology having been practiced for many centuries in Europe as well as Asia. And there's also some interesting information that has come to light as we're looking at the Egyptian inscription that is found in the physician's tomb that simply confirms that reflexology was used several centuries in the past. What we're interested in doing in this presentation is actually taking the human body and correlating the various organs and the glands and the various parts of the body right onto the feet for each and every reflex area that correlates or corresponds to that particular organ or gland in the body. And that will be our next section, is the actual correlation of the anatomy. How are we going to do this? We're going to have our friend Harvey help us with the explanation of this. There are certain guidelines and all that we do need to establish, and in helping us with this, we are going to be using the complete guide to foot reflexology written by Kevin and Barbara Kuntz, which has the zones and the guidelines very well established in these writings. Dr. William Fitzgerald, a medical doctor, in the year 1913 brought to the attention of the medical profession what he called zone therapy. It was the theory that any pressure applied on a specific area would affect anything within that very same zone. As an example, first of all, we're going to be seeing that we divide the body right down the very center, which means that the various parts of the body that would be on the left-hand side of the body would be represented in the individual's left foot and also in their left hand. The various parts of the body that would be on the right side of the midline of the body, as it's referred to, the midline, would be located, or the reflexes to these would be located in the foot and also the hand. Now, Dr. William Fitzgerald mentioned using just a total of 10 zones, and in reflexology we use just 10 zones. You might note that we begin with zone 1 right at the midline of the body or of the skull, as zone 2, and going out to the lateral side of the body, zone 5, 1 through 5, going each direction. If we were to follow these zones right straight through the body, we would come through and note that the thumb is in zone 1. If we were to follow zone 1 right straight through the body, we would end up with the great toe or the large toe being zone 1 also, which means the following. If you were to accidentally stub your toe and injure it, and it would swell up, you would not be able to work on your large toe, would we? But if we were to work on the thumb on the same zone, we can do a lot to relieve the pain in our large toe by working the thumb on the same side. Our eyes are in zones 2 and 3, and if we follow this right on through the body, we find also that the kidneys are in zones 2 and 3, and there's a great correlation between the eyes, and the kidneys. Now we'll move over just a slight amount here and review that the skull, you notice, has all 10 zones. In other words, we divide the skull right in half. And we have zone 1 through 5 on each side, beginning with the midline, going to the lateral side of the skull, each direction, zones 1 through 5. Now, we're going to next take a look at the foot itself. And we want to keep in mind that we divide the body exactly in half, right down through the center. And so as a result, the left foot would represent all of the various parts of the body on the left side. Our right foot would, of course, represent the various parts of the body on the right side. Keeping in mind that as we study reflexology, that it would be as if an individual were seated facing us. So on our left would be their right, and on our right would be their left. It may sound confusing, but it really isn't. Now keep in mind that we mentioned that the 2 large toes represent the skull, and we have all 10 zones in these 2 large toes. We have zones 1 through 5 on each large toe. You will note too, though, that we have the large toe or the great toe listed as zone 1 out to the lateral side, or the smallest toe being zone 5. Now, this of course represents the lateral side of the body right out here in zone 5, as we'd actually be coming right down in through this section. And this is the way that we will be using the zones. In other words, dividing the human body in half and then using a total of 5 zones from the midline to the lateral side on each side. The zones are very important because they help us with the accuracy of where the various organs and glands are actually located. Now, as we go a little bit further, we're going to be using some guidelines where we actually place these on the feet. We have a total of 4 guidelines, and they are, of course, the very same on both feet. At the base of the metatarsal bones, we find what is referred to as the guideline to the diaphragm. And just as we will be looking at Harvey in just a few minutes, we will note that the guideline to the diaphragm, or the muscular partition that we'll be looking at, will be the contour very, very similar as it is right on the foot. So at the base of the 5 metatarsal bones, or heads, as we'll be feeling these also in that demonstration, we'll locate our guideline to the diaphragm. Next, we go to the lateral side of the foot and we find a protruding bone. This is called the 5th metatarsal extension bone, and the high point of that 5th metatarsal extension bone represents the individual's guideline to their waistline, coming right straight across. Now, that guideline, our anatomical waistline, is not where we buckle our belt, but an anatomical waistline is the bottom of the last rib, and that makes a great big difference. Next, as we follow on through onto the foot and we come right on down, we will observe a change of color, and we refer to that on both feet as our heel line. And if we were to take and actually place our hand on the top of the foot and hold the toes back, we will find a very pronounced tendon that comes right down through here, and that represents the dotted line on both feet, the tendon line. We use these 4 major guidelines because certain organs and glands and parts of the body would either be above or below either one of any of these guidelines, or on the medial or the lateral side of the tendon line. Now, these are the guidelines that we'll be using in our studies of reflexology. So at this point, we have established the zones, and we have also established our guidelines. Next, we need to consider a few things further, and that is going to be, as we turn back a slight amount, we do have what are called referral areas. Now, you might note that we do want to keep in mind that the reflexes are in the arms and the hands, the very same as they are in the legs, the knee, and right on down into the foot. So as a result, we have the shoulder and the hip. In other words, they correlate. If an individual breaks a hip, we will note exceptionally large amount of tenderness in the shoulder. If an individual is suffering with a knee problem, we can actually work on the elbow or teach them how to work on their own elbow. The fingers and the thumb correspond to the toes on the feet. The thumb is the very same as the large toe, and the smallest finger would actually represent the fifth toe or the smallest toe. So we have what we call referral areas that we turn to also. Let's take the things that we've just learned and now apply them to Harvey. Today we find a lot of tension and stress in the human body, especially so in the neck area and on out into the shoulder blade and upper back. We find that the neck area, of course, would be correlated, one half of it, where the large toes connect onto the foot. And this would be a good key area to concentrate on for a lot of tension in the neck. On out into the shoulder area, out into zone 5, would be picking up underneath of the small toe, as is pictured in green in this section. Right in through here would represent the individual's shoulder. Now, as we look at the lung section, this large section right in through here of the individual's right lung, this of course would be above the diaphragm, and this is painted in the yellow, which would represent the lung. Next we move on down and we find that our liver, this large section in through here, would be represented on the individual's right foot. The larger portion of it would be pictured in red. Then as we move on down, we have our ascending colon and half of the transverse, and the small intestines, one half of those found on the right-hand side of the midline, would be actually pictured on from the waistline on down, with the ascending colon, half of the transverse, and then the small intestines is pictured in brown in that section. Going over to the left foot, and on the left-hand side of the midline, we will of course be picking up the other half of the neck that we talked about at the base of the large toe. The lung on the left side would be of course pictured now in yellow once again, just like it was on the other side. As we come on down in the human body, we have our stomach right in through this section here. It's pictured in green in this section through here. Now actually it goes on back, but we have things that will overlap in that section. We move on down, we have the balance of the transverse colon and the descending colon, and then recall the other half of the small intestines that would be pictured all in this section in through here in the brown. Next we need to begin taking a few parts off of Harvey and begin seeing what lays behind this particular section. We will first of all remove the lungs, and we are taking a very good view of the heart. Anatomically speaking, the larger portion of the heart would be on the left-hand side of the midline, a smaller portion being on the right-hand side of the midline, and this of course would be overlapping with the chest, the lungs that we talked about, the breast, and the upper back, actually from our diaphragm line up, including the heart on both feet. We remove the section for the heart, and next we will consider the section for our liver. As we remove the liver and we go to the very back portion, it gives us an excellent view of our gallbladder, which is embedded underneath of the folds of the liver and is pictured in green. We remove next our stomach, and we will note that we have behind this now other parts of the body to consider. We can identify very well our diaphragm line beginning right here at the bottom of the last rib as it actually comes up anatomically and right on across in this section of the human body all the way across and back down to the bottom of the last rib. So if we were to take and place an actual line across it, that represents the individual's anatomical waistline. So as we look further into the body, we're going to be finding other organs and glands and parts of the body. Next, we will remove our section for the ascending colon on the right-hand side of the body. As it comes up, we have a flexure or a bend, and this is coming on across with the transverse colon coming clear across the human body. We have another flexure or a bend, and then we have the descending colon coming down. Now this is a very good view in as much as that as we turn this right on around, we will note that this descending colon continues to come down, and then we have a tremendous flexure here that is called the sigmoid flexure. You might note that there's a tremendous bend right in this area, and then it comes right on around and terminates into the rectal area, so that when we would actually turn this back around as it is placed in the human body, the rectal area would be very far back into the human body or very deep within the human body. Now, we want to recall that we did establish our guideline for the waistline. We have another section right in through here, and this would be our right kidney. If we were to remove the right kidney and actually divide this in half, one half of the reflexes to the right kidney would be above the waistline, and one half of it would be below the waistline. And so it is correlated in yellow right in through this section through here, half of it being above the anatomical waistline, the other part being below. You recall when we looked at the gallbladder that was pictured in green, embedded in the liver. It's in approximately zone 4 in the human body, and here it is placed on the right foot only in green in that section. We have the straw-colored organ and gland right in this area that is our pancreas. If we were to divide the body exactly in half and right down the center, we'll have the larger portion of the pancreas that would be actually located on the individual's left foot. Now this is pictured in the orange as it comes through here, with just a smaller portion of the pancreas that would be right and pictured in orange on the right foot. So it's correlated anatomically right on through, just like the organs and the glands lay within the body. We also have our esophagus as it comes down through the human body and comes right into the very top portion of our stomach. Now this is a key area for individuals that suffer with hiatal hernias, because many times this ballooning takes place as the esophagus comes through the diaphragm, and so that would place that on the individual's left foot only, as is pictured right here in the black markings, as this would come through right, located right here on their left foot only. This was just a very brief description of the various organs and the glands and how this actually is correlated onto the feet. Further studies, of course, are available. Now, let's look at Harvey's back. We have the central nervous system, or the spine. All parts of the body receive a portion of its nerve supply either directly or indirectly from the central nervous system. The head actually rests on what is called the atlas and axis. We have a total of 7 cervical. Then we have a total of 12 thoracic vertebrae as they come right on down through the body, coming down to the individual's waistline, and as the vertebrae become larger and wider in width, we have the 5 lumbar. They come right on down into the section. If we were to add a section that is not on this, at this point would be the tailbone section, the sacrum, and the coccyx. We place this right in the location where it would be. You might notice also, if we were to take and get a side view of the tailbone section, the contour of how this actually comes down and cups in. And that, of course, is correlated onto the foot also. Next, we'll take our friend and simply turn this individual to the side. And we want to correlate the profile of this individual and how the spine actually is related into onto the foot. We actually have the back portion of the head with the cervical vertebra, the back portion of the skull coming right down into this section for the first 7 cervical. we have the 12 thoracic that come around into the shoulder area and come right on down to the waistline. The actual curvature of the human body into the lumbar section. And then, as we just mentioned, the tailbone section. How it comes down and it actually makes that curve. We want to be sure that this comes down and would curve right on around to approximately 1/2 of the width of the heel. Let's now apply this theory to an actual application of reflexology to the real foot. We will demonstrate the techniques used to apply reflexology. At this point, we are simply relaxing the foot, getting it prepared for what lies ahead. You might notice that there is a twisting of the foot. These different movements have such a good feel when they're properly done. Different movements on the feet feel so good. After all, we are concerned with stress, and we're working to reduce stress throughout the entire body through just the feet. We will be using the thumb to apply a pressure, and at the same time use what is known as a walking motion. You might note that the thumbs bend at the first joint, and oh, the comfort that that brings about. We also use the other fingers in reflexology. You note the index finger, and as we correlate this for what we've already learned, this represents where the head connects onto the body or on the neck area. There's a lot of tension in the neck today, and generally is quite a very sensitive area. But our goal, of course, is to work the sensitivity out. So you note that we use the thumbs, we use the fingers. We don't only work on the bottom portion of the feet, but we're actually interested in working the top portion of the foot as well as the outside portion or the lateral side, and also the medial side. Depending on the amount of stress in the body, you'll feel some tenderness in certain areas of the foot. But by the time that we've completed these techniques, covering all of the reflexes on both feet, we should have accomplished our goal of improving the circulation throughout the whole body and remove the stress that concerns all health-minded persons today. For those of you that may be interested in further information on the studies of reflexology, perhaps you would be interested in our second tape or video on reflexology. For those who have made a study of the science of reflexology and who now would like to see how all their knowledge can be translated into an effective treatment, we are happy to be able to present this demonstration. You might notice that we do have a colored model to watch, which has the various organs and glands that are placed on it. This will help us to visualize a treatment better as it progresses. We will, of course, refer to it from time to time. We all have a common goal, and that is to successfully remove stress from our lives and thereby enhance the quality of our health as well as that of our friends and families. Notice first of all the many relaxing movements that are preceding the actual treatment. A treatment can actually begin with either foot, the left foot first or the right foot. Makes absolutely no difference. You can start where you would like, but the following is a demonstration of a system that a practitioner has used effectively for a long time. This individual is beginning with the toes. You note that the toes are started at the very top and are moved down with the thumb. The hand that is not being used is, of course, protecting those toes. The hand that we're working with lays on top of that hand. You note that we have changed directions. In other words, we have worked one half of the toes for the width of them all the way across. Now with the hands changed, we are starting at the top and working down to the bottom where the toes connect onto the foot itself. The toes, of course, represent the skull or the head. The two large toes combined represent the head. The small toes serve, as we could say, fine-tuners, so to speak, for the large toes. In your studies of reflexology, you have, of course, covered the different zones and how we correlate this information. So any problem that we have in the head, the toes are very, very effective. Note that the pituitary is being worked at this location, coming in from the midline, changing directions, working down from the top. And where those 2 points meet, it's a hooking back motion that's actually used with the thumb. Next, we observe that the brain is being worked on, the reflexes to it. This, of course, would be exactly one half of the brain, and as you're viewing this, this would be the left half of the brain. You might keep in mind that the left half of the brain controls the right half of the body. Again, relaxing the foot, keeping it soft and pliable so that the individual does not feel a lot of stress. Notice also that this practitioner is working the tops of the toes, which are also very, very effective. Many times some individuals fail to work the tops of the toes, and they are as important to work as the bottom portion of the toes that we took a look at. Many individuals work the toes in different ways. Some in this section would be, of course, working the toes from the top down to where the toes connect onto the foot, whereas you note that this particular individual is working the toes sideways, working across. Now, this is very effective and has a very good feel. Many times right at the base of the nail, there's a lot of sensitivity right in this area. There's a tremendous amount of tension in the neck due to the stress that we find in the world today, and right as we're working around this section, right in through this section here, you will note that that's an area in your practice that is very, very sensitive. This would, of course, represent where the side of the neck comes down, where the head connects on, the trapezius muscle area, and also a portion of that was worked would also be the section for the throat. While we're in this area, you note that the foot is forced forward, and this individual is working with different fingers, not only the thumb and the index finger, but note the third finger is being worked as well. We're now in the chest and lung, breast, upper back area, and we're working in between the metatarsal bones on the top portion of the foot. This is a soft, fleshy area, and you'll note where we actually stop right at one place. and this is true all the way across. She finds bone in this location. As a result, we would not be working further up onto the foot. This area does not require the pressure that the bottom portion of the foot would require, since it is so soft. Once again, going back and relaxing the foot and keeping it to where one can continue on with their treatment. Next, you notice that the padding, so to speak, has been pulled down. That is to expose this bony ridge where the toes connect onto the foot. This ridge across this area at the base of the second and third toes, right in this area, represents the reflexes for the eyes and the ears. Very effective for any eye and ear problems. The neck area that we're working in this area, you note that she is dropping down a slight amount with each movement. And this is, of course, covering the neck area, which would be picking up right at this location the thyroid and the parathyroids. And also a third way of working the bony ridge, applying the pressure directly down on top of that bony ridge. Next, we are working the esophagus. Now this is located on the left foot only, and you note that the thumb is hooking right in underneath of that metatarsal bone, just off of the reflexes for the spine. Right at this location where we are holding the pressure is where the esophagus comes through the diaphragm and enters into the top portion of the stomach, and is the key area at this location right here for hiatal hernias, left foot only. The thymus is an area that definitely needs consideration also, and as we're working this area right in here, this is the reflex area for the thymus, located on both feet for the same location. Now the toes are being held back, and as we're doing so, it exposes that bony area in between these metatarsal bones that we want to be working in. This is a tougher part. You might note how much more pressure that you can even see is being needed with the thumb. The portion of the thumb that is being used is, of course, the side portion of the thumb. Note how the pressure is applied, it's maintained. We walk slowly as we're working right up in between these bones. This, of course, is the chest, the lung, the breast, and the upper back. Now, as we start right at that area, we're starting actually with the diaphragm and ending up on the bony ridge. This is the diaphragm from one side, from one view, coming back slowly across the other way, right where the metatarsal bones, the base of each of these. This is a very good area to concentrate on for relaxing tension. If you just had a few minutes to work with an individual, this would be the key area to concentrate on. Notice how the toes are even brought over the top of the thumb, right up in that hollow that we show in our seminars for a key area for high blood pressure. Again, relaxing the toes and the foot and keeping it pliable. Next, we're going to be working from the waistline slowly up to the diaphragm. Now, as we're working from the diaphragm down to the waistline, first of all, right in this section, we are picking up a small portion of the liver beyond the midline over onto the left foot. Next, we pick up, as we are overlapping different organs and glands in this section, we're going to be specifically, as we're pinpointing the adrenal gland reflex right here. We can also change and bring our other hand over the top and pick it up coming down the other direction, 1/2 way from the diaphragm line to the individual's waistline. Continuing on in this particular section, we need to consider once again our colored model, keeping in mind that with the colored model we have different organs and glands in this part that are shown in different colors. Actually, crisscrossing this section covers the section for the stomach, the larger portion of the pancreas. We've located and identified the adrenal glands. The upper portion of the left kidney would be in this section, and then as we're working on out to the lateral side of the foot, we're actually picking up the spleen out in this section. So there's a lot in this area, and that's why we need to work slowly in order to be sure that we cover each and every reflex systematically. You might note how thoroughly that this area is worked out several times, ending up in that diaphragm each time. Being on the receiving end, one really feels this. And when this is done properly, once again, we're accomplishing what we're working toward, and that is to improve the circulation in the entire body. The foot feels warm, and then again relaxing the foot. Next, we'll be working from the waistline down, and many individuals tend to hurry in this part. There's a lot in this area. So as we begin working from the individual's waistline, we're going to locate that. You might notice that the practitioner points out the high point of the fifth metatarsal bone represents the anatomical waistline, and from this point down to the bottom into the heel is going to be the area for the transverse colon. As we're working right in this area, right in here would be the section for the bottom portion right there of the kidney on the left side, working on out to the toward the descending colon. We have the splenic flexure here. Remember that goes up high. Small intestines are in this area, and as we begin right in this section, we're overlapping the ureter tube and the bladder right in this area, which overlaps the lumbar portion of the spine as well, that we'll be considering later. Note now we're working toward the sigmoid flexure, one way of three, working down at a 45-degree angle and hooking back. Notice now too we can take the other hand and work down right into that sigmoid flexure. There's an indentation right there. Also, another way, if you have difficulty in getting into that, is to hold the foot and apply pressure straight in to that reflex area. And once again, just systematically covering that section all out many times so that it's very thoroughly covered. The bottom portion of the foot has systematically been covered. We do need to consider one last section. That, of course, is the sciatic nerve in the calcaneus area or the heel area, as is pictured in blue. Now, this does need to be worked, and it is just below the sigmoid flexure that was covered. We'll note that the practitioner is going to work this section next. Again, fingers and thumb are opposite or parallel of each other, and for leverage, you can see that this requires a considerable amount of pressure right in through here also in order to pick this up thoroughly. So we could actually say that the bottom portion of this left foot has been very thoroughly covered. Next, we're going to consider the spine or the central nervous system. We're interested in working on the underside of this bony ridge that is being identified and getting down into the heel area. We want to keep in mind that right in this section here is going to be the section for the tailbone about as far back as 1/2 of the width of the heel, as is shown with the dotted lines. Keep in mind that the tailbone section actually cups under in the spine, and so that is why we need to work the tailbone completely around into that heel and not stop back too far up. Now, in working in this section, you note that the individual begins right in this tailbone section, actually laying the index finger on the underside to allow pressure using 2 fingers right in this area. This works very, very well. Coming in on the underside, actually even with 3 fingers, terrific pressure by being able to work that, or even continuing on then with the thumb. Now we're working in the lumbar area. We're working up to the waistline. Note that the fingers and thumb are stretched far apart, so she brings her hand up over the top of the foot in order to be able to continue on, gaining the leverage, continuing on. Changing hands and working down the spine as well, starting at the atlas or into the 7th cervical, right into the upper thoracic portion. Also working across the spine, the reflexes to the spine. You'll feel that bony ridge. You want to work as much as 1/2 of an inch of the distance from that bony bridge, 1/4 of an inch or so on each side. Working the entire spine. Actually a total of 4 directions. Note how the individual is changing and working across this area once again. Recall that we worked up the spine, we worked down the spine, and then working the 2 directions this way, thoroughly covering the reflexes out to the spine. There's a slight indentation right where the toe connects on at this location, right here, 7th cervical, key area for nerve supply to the thyroid, the bursa in the shoulder, and so forth. As we continue with the treatment, we're next interested in the Achilles tendon area, which is going to be this soft, fleshy area. Note that we begin right at this location, working down slowly in this area. This is actually the sciatic nerve as well. A continuation of it would be from this point right on around into the heel that we've already worked. In the Achilles tendon area that we're going to show working down again, we work this several times. This is the area for chronic conditions. You note now that the individual has placed the thumb, pulling the foot in to where the thumb is located, halfway between the high point of the ankle bone and the back portion of the heel. This is the reflex area for the uterus for the female and the prostate reflex for the male. Notice that the individual is actually using or demonstrating 2 different ways to work that. Also revolving the foot is very good as well, and maintaining the pressure on that. I certainly can feel that in any of those directions that was worked. And then, of course, once again, relaxing the foot. Next, we're going to consider the lymphatic system. This is pictured as in green as a strap from ankle bone to ankle bone. Now let's see how our reflexologist will be working this particular area. You might note that the foot is held up straight, and with the index finger, we slowly walk all the way across from one side of the foot to the other, from ankle bone to ankle bone. This, of course, is where the foot joins onto the leg, and you'll actually feel a groove in that section. Now, working this both directions is very, very important. You'll be able to feel that groove as you apply the pressure from ankle bone to ankle bone. Also, the lymphatic drainage point is very important, located the same location as pictured in black with a small dot. between the first and second zone, or between the large toe and the second toe, right where the toes connect onto the foot. This is the area that corresponds to the thoracic duct where the lymph joins the venous bloodstream. We might note how our practitioner is working this specifically for the lymphatic drainage point. Moving to the lateral side of the foot, we have actually 4 sections to consider. First of all, let's consider the location for the sciatic nerve right in underneath of the ankle bone. We'll also be considering how we're going to be working for reproductive, which is the little orange dot that is being pointed to. We'll also be considering the triangular area in through this section for the hip, low back, knee, and leg. And then beginning with the individual's waistline, you notice a number of X's that go up toward where the small toe connects onto the foot. These X's are the area for the arm, the elbow, and the hand, and the red dot represents the exact area for the bursa in the shoulder. Now let's see how we're actually going to be working these on the foot. You note that our practitioner holds the foot up straight, not tipping the foot to see where we're going to be working. This is a small area in through here. Note that the third finger is being used with the thumb counted as number 1. She is going to simply be working back toward her, the practitioner, in a small area. This is where the sciatic nerve is the closest to the skin in the longest nerve pathway in the body. Working it toward her several times, changing hands, holding the foot up again straight, not tipping it to see where we're working, and with the index finger now working up toward the knee in that direction. And that, of course, is how we're working the sciatic reflex. Next, let's see how we work the reproductive. Keep in mind that the guidelines for this would be from the high point of the ankle bone to the back corner of the heel. Now that would be, of course, the reproductive would be the testicle reflex for the male and the ovary reflex for the female. Note that pressure is applied with the thumb being over on the medial portion of the foot. This is how we get the leverage, and with the index finger applying a slight amount of pressure directly onto that area, somewhat of a little bit of rotation, and then stopping. Also, the foot can be placed in the palm of the hand, and you will note that pressure can be applied here, and again, just a few applications of pressure, and then we would be moving on in our treatment. Next, we're going to see how we'd be working for the somewhat triangular, soft, fleshy area. There's bone above this area and bone behind it. This would be the helper area for the hip area, the low back, the knee, and the leg. This is soft, it's fleshy, it can be worked with 2 fingers or 3. You may like to work it with a thumb, as is being shown. You may even like to consider coming in over the top, working it down toward the bottom portion of the foot. The importance of changing the directions is that many times you pull the sensitivity out by working a different direction. Now, we're next considering the X's are out on the lateral side from the guideline to the waistline, and we're going to be working up to where the bursa is. And as we're working this area, this is a bony area out through here. You note that it's being worked with the index finger right to this location for the bursa in the shoulder right here. That's an area that in many cases is very tender, where there's some type of problem with the bursa or bursitis. This area in here is the area that we do concentrate on, as we mentioned, for the arm, the elbow, and the hand. If we were to take an anatomy chart and look at that, it also would represent zone 5, which includes the ribs, or in other words, the rib cage. Note how our practitioner is working around this particular area. That would, of course, pick up the rib cage, or the actual lateral side of the rib. So if someone has a broken rib at any particular point between the waistline and where the small toe connects onto the foot, wherever that is the most sensitive would, of course, be where that rib would be broken or fractured. Next, we're considering the right foot, and we're going to be finding that most of the right foot will be worked the very same as we were working the left foot. The toes, of course, would be worked the same. The bony ridge into the chest and lung area, as is pictured in yellow, the breast and the upper back. Moving on down onto the foot, we note that even the diaphragm area, where the solar plexus is embedded in that, would be worked the same. But as we're looking at the section where we have the red, which covers a large section, we find the majority of the liver on the right side of the midline. The kidney, the adrenal glands would be worked the same. The orange that we are looking at is the smaller portion of the pancreas, with the larger portion being left on the left-hand side. The green that is above and below this curve represents the duodenum in the body. The duodenum is at the exit of the stomach and is a key area to be working for duodenal ulcers. Many of the physicians feel that stress is one of the leading causes of duodenal ulcers. So any individual that suffers with this would be considering the diaphragm to relax the tension, as well as the duodenum. What we would be considering here on the right foot, specifically for changes, would be locating the green area out on toward the lateral side of the foot for the gallbladder. We'll be taking a look in a few minutes how we're going to work that specifically. Going right on down the bottom of the foot from this point on down. As we're looking at this, the rest of this section would be worked the very same as we did on the left foot, excluding one area, and that will be the ileocecal valve, which we will pinpoint also as to how we're going to be working this. All right, when we turn to the actual foot, we're going to consider these two areas. First of all, we are going to keep in mind that the gallbladder is embedded under the folds of the liver. And as a result, this can vary a slight amount, but basically we find this in approximately zone 4. It will be the most sensitive area. Now we have two ways of working this: with the right thumb, or on the right hand working this, or with the left hand taking the thumb once again. Wherever this area in this large red section is, as we looked on the colored model, would be the most sensitive, that will be the gallbladder reflex. Now moving down further, we're going to identify the fifth metatarsal extension bone out here on the lateral side. The high point of that represents the guideline to the waistline. We're going to, with pressure, apply pressure with that index finger and slip right down to the furthest indentation, which will be for the ileocecal valve, and we can, with the hand laid over the top with pressure with the thumb, use more or less of a hooking back motion out toward the lateral side of the foot. Also, we can take the other hand and come in to approximately zone 4, or just a little bit further in some instances, and pick up the ileocecal valve with the right hand as well, with a hooking back motion. A hooking back motion is where the pressure is applied, and then, as we note this, it's a hooking back. Those would be the only changes on the right foot, on the bottom of the foot, versus the left foot. As we're observing the top portion of both feet, we're going to note that the reflexes are the very same on both feet. we demonstrated how we'd be working this particular area on the left foot. So it's simply a matter of working the top portion of both feet the very same. Now as we look at the medial portion of both feet and we make the comparison on the inside or the medial portion, once again we'll note that the reflexes are identical, so as has already been demonstrated, these would be the same on the right side also. Going out to the lateral portion of the feet, we also note that all of the reflexes are the very same on the lateral side as well. So it's a matter of simply working these sections the very same. We hope the efforts of our staff at the Progressive Reflexology Institute have helped you as the practitioner to develop a more professional application of the science. More training is available through our seminars. So we look forward to your joining our classes in the future, as we all want to be fully equipped and professional in our practice of reflexology.